As Julius Caesar said when he took his army and crossed the river Rubicon into Italy, the die is cast. And what do I mean by that? Well, what I mean is there's no turning back now. Said simply, all the summer food plots are in, all the clover's been mowed, the protein feeders are all full, so now it's all done. We simply are going to maintain it. It's June 4th, and we're into maintenance mode now. So I thought it'd be interesting to take a quick look at some of the food plots to see what they look like on June 4th, and then you can use your imagination to see how they're going to feed the deer and assure that the nutritional plane stays as high as possible all summer to maximize their health. So what we're in right now is the type of field that my summer legume field for the white-tailed deer. This is the summer annuals. It is a combination of sun hemp, soybeans, cowpeas, sorghum, grain sorghum, pearl millet, buckwheat, and sunflower. So let's take a look at a little of each of them. Here you can see a sunflower. All of this is designed to do a couple of things. One, obviously, to feed the deer, and then also to feed the soil. So you have all sorts of different root structures, all sorts of different leaf structures to capture the sunlight converted into carbon and sugars in the soil. So I'm improving the soil here at the same time that I'm feeding the deer. So we have sunflowers right here. Here you can see a sun hemp plant. One of my favorites. It's a great plant, the sun hemp. It will get tall like that, and then the cowpeas, like this right here, the cowpeas will grow up the sun hemp, as it will climb up the pearl millet. I frankly can't tell the difference between the pearl millet and the sorghum, but I have them both in here, so they're doing good. And of course the buckwheat. You can see the buckwheat, the white flowers all out through this field. Buckwheat's a wonderful plant. Not only does it help the soil, but it attracts pollinators, it attracts bees, and great for the soil, as I said. And one thing I've learned this year that's been very interesting is that the deer like the buckwheat. I've planted buckwheat in years past and not seen much grazing pressure on it, but this year, walking through the fields early on, I've seen a fair amount of grazing pressure on it, which has surprised me. So, at any rate, I have 4 fields like this scattered across the farm. This particular field happens to be 9 acres. The summer annual fields that I have range from 9 acres up to 18 acres. So this would be the standard for them. Let's take a moment now and go look. We'll go to the dove field next, the field that I planted for doves. Take a look at it. We'll look at some clover fields, Durana clover fields, as well as red clover fields. We'll take a quick look at the joint vetch and Alice clover fields. So with that in mind, let's go take a little tour. We're in the dove field now. It's an 11-acre field. The primary cultivars that I have in here for the doves are sunflowers, like you can see right here, and brown top millet. Beyond that, I have some pearl millet, I have the grain sorghum, I have some cowpeas and sun hemp as well. And this field, as I said, is 11 acres, and one of the values of it, I think, is you've got a high line right there. I don't know if you can see the high line in the background, but the high lines running through a dove field are always a good idea. It gives the doves a place to loaf and hang out. So you can see, I can see here now that some of the brown top millet is starting to go to seed. As this field matures, I'll start mowing little strips of it. I won't do it all at once. I'll mow little strips of it to start attracting the doves, and then as the season gets closer, have it all prepped up and ready. One of the reasons I plant all the different species in here is same reason as in the other field. I do that to have as many different root structures as possible and as many different leaf structures as possible to enhance the soil. So once again, just like my deer annual field, my dove annual field is not only going to be feeding the doves, but it's also going to be feeding the soil. So we'll see how all this works out, and look forward to a great dove hunt here. So from now, let's move on down the road a little bit. We'll go look at Durana clover field, and all I've done there is mowed. So let's go take a look at it now. Since we're touring the farm, looking at the various fields and crops that I use to enhance the nutritional plane of the deer all summer, I thought it'd be worth taking a moment to talk about supplemental feeding. I'm a big proponent of supplemental feeding. In January of this year, when it's cold, you got ice storms, the typical late winter kinds of weather patterns, I came in and started feeding a 50% ration, 50% corn, 50% soybeans. That was to get the energy up. Corn's very high energy, and the protein, of course, from the soybeans to help the deer transition through the winter periods. Even though I have clover and small grains growing in the food plots, I still find that that's an advantage. About mid-May, I shifted over to an 18% protein pellet. It's a very high quality pellet that has prebiotics in it. It has essential oils in it. Interestingly, the essential oils act like a natural antibiotic to clean the deer out, to help with parasite control and such. So I will keep these feeders full with 18% protein till the end of August. About the time the acorns start falling, it's over with. Couple of things about protein supplemental feeding that I think are important. One is you have to have enough feeders out to be sure that you equally feed all the deer. Throwing one feeder out, it may be okay, but it doesn't really enhance the nutritional plane for the entire herd. I have a feeder for every 60 acres, and to me that assures that all the deer have a shot at it. And the other thing is consistency. You need to keep them full, you need to keep them going. Another aspect of feeding protein that's very important that some people don't think about is the feeders need to be designed in such a way that they're predator proof. Non-target predation can be as much as 30%. If you're feeding a lot of protein, you can do the math on that, it gets very expensive. This particular feeder, designed by Steel Outdoors out of Mississippi, is coon proof. There are an awful lot of coons in Louisiana, and it's designed such that the coons and possums and squirrels can't climb up it. They can't get to the spout. So 100% of the protein here goes for the deer. There's another soapbox item that I'll spend a moment or two talking about. I know a number of people are anti-supplemental feeding. They believe that by congregating the deer that you increase the risk for disease spread like chronic wasting disease and such. I know certain wildlife agencies are promoting that, and some biologists as well as private land managers are concerned about that. I don't believe it at all. I don't believe that supplemental feeding creates any such problem. Deer groom each other every day, no matter if you have supplemental feeding or not. And there have been numerous scientific studies to talk about the benefits of supplemental feeding. And beyond the scientific studies, there is an incredible anecdotal base of evidence to show that the supplemental feeding enhances the nutritional plane and simply makes deer healthier. So another component of that I find interesting is a lot of the same folks that are anti-supplemental feeding will go plant genetically modified organisms. An organism that science created and did not exist in Earth until 23 years ago, when science combined the genes to put together something that could be, for example, Roundup Ready resistant and so forth. So in the history of Earth, until 23 years ago, genetically modified organisms didn't exist, so they plant these things, and then they turn around and drench them in poison to keep every possible weed out, and for that they say that's their deer feed. Well, I'm not really going to be judgmental or critical of it. I have a different approach. We don't plant GMOs, we don't drench the food that the deer eats in poison, and we do supplemental feed. And frankly, I think the results speak for itself. So enough of my soapbox. I believe in supplemental feeding. I think it's very valuable if done properly, and it's just one more step that you can take to raise the nutritional plane of the deer one step higher. I think it's valuable. I'm in about a 5-acre Durana clover field right now. This particular field was planted in 50 pounds to the acre of wheat and 3 pounds to the acre of daikon radishes last September. That is to hunt over. This is primarily a hunting field, although the Durana clover with just modest rains through the summer will last you almost all year. Certainly between the Durana clover and the wheat and the radishes, this is a 12-month field. I established the Durana clover probably 3 years ago. You can see it's still going very strong. And while they may like the red clover a little better than the Durana, this field is still heavily grazed and very, very valuable part of my program. I would also say I know that a number of people from perhaps Waupaca County, Wisconsin, or Pike County, Illinois, or maybe Webb County, Texas might be watching this video. And I'll tell you, I think that this 5-acre field right here is about as good a place to sit on an afternoon hunt as any place in North America. There's just no telling what might walk through this field, and I can guarantee you, you'll have a great hunt. That said, now let's go take a look at some red clover and joint vetch, see how I have them together, and kind of conclude what I've been working on with my summer nutrition program. This is the last field we'll take a look at. This is a medium red clover field, and same as the Durana field, I planted it in wheat and daikon radishes last fall. You can still see some of the daikon radishes growing here, but candidly, I've done nothing to this field since I planted it last mid-September. And I've never seen grazing pressure on clover any heavier. There is not a single stalk or leaf that hadn't been grazed in this whole field. You can't see it, but there's another half over there. So I don't know, I've probably got 4 or 5 acres of the clover here. And it has been heavily grazed, so I'm very happy with the results here. Now, this red clover, if we get into a droughty, hot summer, it may play out. But to compensate for that, what I've done, so I have the red clover here, and adjacent to it, let's take a walk over here. You can see some of the, well, this is rye right here. What I've done is here, this field, I have in a mixture of 50% joint vetch, 50% Alice clover. Just planted it a couple of weeks ago, so it's just coming up, and you may be able to see the rows, but it's a great stand. The whole field is full of it. I do a 50-50 mix because the two plants are highly compatible. They work together very well. The Alice likes slightly drier soil, so I've got a little bit of a hill over there, and the Alice may do a little better on the hill. The vetch tends to like wetter soil, so it may do a little better in the lower spots, but together they do very well. Their growth characteristics are similar. They will both go till the frost in the fall. Now, what's going to happen in this field is as the red clover plays out, this field will get tall. It will get chest high by frost, and it will be heavily grazed. I can't say it enough. I've talked about it in the video where I talked about planting joint vetch, and I'm going to say it again here. Joint vetch, Ashenominy, is absolutely one of my favorite plants. Deer absolutely love it. It's very high in protein. It's very digestible, and I'll tell you, joint vetch grows big bucks. So that's all of what we've shown here in this video is indicative of the various plots around the farm. Shows you what we're doing and our scheme. And as I said in the very beginning of this video, the die is cast. Now all we do is wait, and as summer comes along, start touring around in the evening with our binoculars and look at bachelor groups. How fun is that? Hope this video was helpful and hope you enjoyed it. Thanks.